Tonight, we will be doing something different. I'll be covering a murder case, an unsolved murder case. This case is convoluted with no solid leads, only speculation, and some profiling that may can give you a different perspective on the many possibilities on what happened on the morning of August 28, 2008. It took them only 5 days, and she was dead. A true mystery with a possible connection to another murder, but I think otherwise. Some say it was a professional government orchestrated hit. Some say it was mistaken identity, or even she fell victim to a serial killer that operated in the area. And then some are just unsure on what to make of this case. You will soon see why neither of these categories may fit your opinion. You will see why it doesn't fit mine. As you know, the Missing Found platform was created for covering only missing person cases, but I had to bring this to you. You will soon see why shortly. Maybe you can help me figure this one out. On a warm summer morning on Thursday, August 28, 2008, in Prince George's County, Laurel, Maryland, 28-year-old Kanika Powell took off work in preparation for a weekend getaway with a new friend to Pride Festival in Atlanta. She used that early morning to run some errands and get her car serviced before they both embarked on the 11-hour trip. Upon returning from running her errands, Kanika was gunned down in her apartment hallway in broad daylight after experiencing a series of week-long anonymous and odd visitors to her front door. You have to wonder, who would want Kanika dead? This was no accident or mistaken identity. In fact, the assailant knew exactly who she was and who to target. There were no eyewitnesses, but neighbors heard her voice, smelled the gunpowder in the air, and the multiple shots fired that eventually claimed the life of Kanika. A chilling case that isn't just what happened, but why and who. We will get into some details about Kanika and who she was, the case details, the strange, unexplainable series of events that led to her violent murder, theories, a possible connection of another murder right in the county, and close with my opinion. You have to ask yourself, how can a very well-educated Army veteran who lived a normal life with a job that required a top-secret clearance be targeted and eventually brutally murdered only steps away from her front door? This is the Missing Found podcast. I'm your host, Jaden Harlow. Before we get into the case, I have a few details to share about the show. The Missing Found is an investigative true crime podcast focusing mainly on unsolved missing person cases in the Black community. The cases that I cover have either gone cold, have little to no media coverage, or have gone without conclusion. You can follow the show on Instagram at The Missing Found or on Medium at The Missing Found to read our original script. I also would like to mention that we have a case suggestion form in the show notes or description box that you can complete to submit your case suggestions that are of the Black and missing. This show is now available on all major podcast platforms, including Apple, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. For Apple Podcast, we ask that you give us a 5-star rating to help the show reach a broader audience, to help find our missing. To access all things of The Missing Found, you can visit our website, themissingfound.com. I ask that you please like, share, comment your thoughts on this case, and subscribe if you found value and want to continue the journey with me to finding our missing and learning about their stories. This is case episode 28, The Murder of Kanika Powell. Who is Kanika? Kanika T. Powell was born on Thursday, January 31st, 1980, to her mother, Judy Forrest. On the episode of Unsolved Mysteries, A Killer Comes Knocking, Judy recounts how Kanika was such a bubbly baby when she was born. She named her Kanika because it was an African descent name. that meant a black cloth, which was sacred and special. From a young age, Kanika was described as ambitious, opinionated, but possessed a pleasant personality, which made it easy for her to make friends. Kanika just got along with everyone. Kanika and her family lived in one of the wealthiest areas for African Americans in the country, Prince George's County. For high school, Kanika attended Largo High School in Upper Marlboro, Maryland, and had several friends, with one being her closest friend, Ayanna, who were neighborhood friends, which progressed into a 15-year friendship. 2 years after graduating, at age 20, she went into the military. She completed her last year in Korea. Judy also recounts how when Kanika was away in the military, she would write her letters apologizing for the hard time Kanika gave her in her teen and high school years. You know, just normal teenage experiences. Judy thought it was so on brand for Kanika because she has such a loving heart. After leaving military service, Kanika started a job as a security contractor with the Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Laboratory in Laurel, Maryland, only 20 minutes from her residence in which she lived alone at Deerfield Run Apartments. Her job was to handle classified information, travel, and handle documents. The position required a top-secret clearance. The textbook definition to a top-secret clearance is a security clearance that gives access to highly sensitive information that could cause serious damage to national security if disclosed without authorization. I will go more into detail about Kanika's job with the very limited information we do have, including her family. But I also want to go more into detail about her clearance, what exactly that means, and the correlation and significance that people are making between her job and her security clearance in her case. So, on to the case details. We will be unpacking a tremendous amount of information. My goal is to keep things structured and easy to consume to help you understand how this plays out and what all of this means in her case. Kanika's case will have you thinking it's one way, then push you in another direction. I want you to follow along and consume the analysis in its entirety so you can formulate your own opinion. So we'll start with day 1. The FBI pays a visit. Saturday, August 23rd, 2008. On the evening of Saturday, August 23rd, around 7 p.m., Kanika was paid a visit by a gentleman who knocked on her apartment door and claimed to have been an FBI agent that needed to speak with her regarding a fraud investigation. When the man made the first knock, she responded, quote, "Who is it?" end quote, and he did not respond. As she got closer to the door, she looked through her peephole and noticed a man who was unfamiliar to her and asked who was he. The man said that he was from the FBI and that he was looking for Kanika Powell. He specifically asked for her by name. With the door closed and locked, Kanika spoke to the gentleman and requested that he show her documentation and a warrant first, since he would not provide his name nor photo identification. This quote-unquote agent held up what appeared to be a law enforcement badge to her peephole, but did not provide any official identification thereof an FBI agent. Because of this, Kanika refused to open the door. After not opening the door, she heard another voice telling the man to walk the opposite way. And I will explain this during our case breakdown. Kanika had assumed that it was a scam and had contacted her local FBI field office, but they confirmed that they did not have an active investigation pertaining to Kanika or any of her associates, nor had any official agents come to her home. They explained to her that it may have been bogus because the FBI does not send agents out alone. They typically leave a card for the subject to get in contact with them. In addition to that, Kanika did contact her local police department to make a report of the incident. She also contacted her leasing office to report what occurred. Kanika described the man that knocked on her door as a black male, dressed in a black hat, black glasses, and a black North Face on. I'd say that this is interesting attire during this period. I want you to remember that this event took place in late August. The weather in the DC and Maryland area is typically hot around this time. I was able to pull the weather archives on this day, and the weather was cloudy for most of the day and reached a high of 83 degrees. But by the time the agent came knocking at her door, the temperature was dropping, making it around 77 degrees on that evening. A North Face coat in August summers in Maryland is just not ideal. I want to also mention that at the time this unknown man knocked on her door, it was still sunny. The sun was close to setting, which would have been around 7:40 p.m. The email of warning. 2 days later, on Monday, August 25th, Kanika sent an email to her network of people. The email reads, quote, "I just wanted to share with you the most scariest thing that happened to me this weekend. Saturday evening around 7 p.m., a man was knocking at my door. As all of you may know, I live alone. I asked who it was and he didn't answer. So once I got close to the door and looked out of the peephole, I saw a male figure that was not familiar to me at all. I asked who he was, and all he stated was that he was from the FBI, that he was looking for Kanika Powell. It freaked me out completely because this man knew my name. He held a shield up but no picture ID, and he never gave his name. He told me he was looking for me in regards to an investigation. I told him that I had no idea as to what he was talking about, and that he would need to show me documentation as well as a warrant for some sort. So he left, and I looked out of my bedroom window and saw him walking. I also heard a voice tell him to walk in the opposite direction. The whole situation was scary and seemed so false. So because of this incident, not only did I get no sleep for the rest of the weekend, I am trying to get an alarm system installed in my apartment. I had one in my old apartment, but I just hadn't had it transferred over to my new one. As far as everything that happened with the guy, I did call the FBI. They told me that it was more than likely bogus because they never come to your door by themselves, and they always leave a card of some sort that you can contact them. I called the local police as well to give them a description just in case someone is out there trying to rape or harm single women. Pass this along. This is not a fake forward. This happened to me, Kanika. Who knows who these guys are and what they're doing in what areas other than mine? Signed, Kanika T. Powell, Special Security." End quote. Kanika was caught off guard by the event, but still at this time she had no idea the magnitude and what was coming. She took appropriate measures, filed the reports, and even had a security system installed in her apartment for added precaution. However, we soon will learn that this wasn't enough. So day 2, a FedEx package. Wednesday, August 27th. Sometime in the evening, only 4 days later, there was another bizarre knock at her door. Except this time, it was from a different man that was unfamiliar to Kanika, just as the first. She went to her front door of her apartment unit and asked who was it. This time, he asked if she was Kanika Powell. Just like the first time, Kanika refused to answer the door. The man said that he had a package for her and would be right back to bring it to her, and that she needed to sign for it. She did communicate that she doesn't have a package. She's not expecting a package. And oddly, the man, dressed in a FedEx uniform with the company top and the khaki shorts, never returned with any package, nor left a door tag for Kanika to retrieve this mystery package. Throughout this ordeal, she was in constant contact with her mother and network of close friends. Kanika now realized that this was not a scam or a case of fraud. She felt someone was targeting her. She felt this way because it happened not just once, but twice, and both in odd instances where they were trying to gain access to her apartment unit and her. These unknown men, who she said were different individuals, asked for her by her full name. From what we see, Kanika may or may not have known why someone would be targeting her and for what reason. Her mother, Judy, offered Kanika to stay with her, and even her best friend, Ayana, but Kanika refused. Kanika felt that no one was going to run her from her home. She was aware. She was in the military and cautious. Kanika even made plans to go on base to acquire a firearm for protection. But none of that ever happened. Now on to day 3, the final delivery. Preparation for the trip. Thursday, August 28th. Kanika was scheduled to take a trip to Atlanta for Pride weekend, so she took off work on this day. This was a planned trip that she wasn't going to take alone. It was actually with a new friend she made, a relationship with a woman. Kanika was bisexual, and her girlfriend or love interest were planning to drive to Atlanta to celebrate at the festival. The drive from Laurel would have been 11 hours. Before she started her morning, at around 7:30 a.m., there was another knock, and it was from another delivery man, a false delivery. Kanika called her mother and asked who delivers packages this early. She felt it was odd, and that it was another episode from the series of events she encountered for the past week. To start her preparation early for the trip, she decided to go get her car serviced before embarking on the drive and run a few other errands. She wanted to get all this taken care of in the morning instead of being out and about in the evening. Now, it's not specifically known what those other errands were, but we can only assume that it was small ins and outs before she leaves for the weekend. After getting her vehicle serviced and running her errands, Kanika returned home to her apartment complex. However, upon returning to her apartment building around 11:50 a.m., she entered her building and was attempting to walk to her unit, which she would have had to walk up a few steps to get to her level in which her apartment unit was on. Kanika was met with someone who was in the hallway and fired several rounds to her upper body, including shots to her head. Prior to being shot multiple times, she had been reported to be heard repeating in fear, quote, "No, no, no," end quote. The assailant vanished and has left us with nearly 2 decades of mystery and unanswered questions. The start to finish. A neighbor contacted Prince George's County PD after hearing the gunshots and seeing Kanika's body laying in a pool of blood. The smell of gun smoke was strong and still fresh in the air. Law enforcement arrived on the scene and found 28-year-old Kanika Powell laying in her hallway, suffering from multiple gunshots, with her wallet and other valuables. This quickly indicated that this was no robbery. Kanika was rushed to the now-defunct Prince George's County Hospital in really bad condition, but she never regained brain activity and died the next day. Kanika's family and close friends did not realize or understand how, in a matter of only 5 days, Kanika goes from bizarre knocks by random men to dead. So now, you ask, how did this happen? Why did this happen, and who was responsible? Let's analyze this deeper in our case breakdown. First, I'm going to give you a timeline so we can understand where we started and ended. The timeline. Friday, August 22nd. Kanika attended a night out with Ayana and other friends in their group to celebrate Ayana's birthday. I will share a specific detail regarding this night that may or may not directly or indirectly relate to her case. Saturday, August 23rd. Kanika received the first knock around 7 p.m. that evening from someone who claimed to have been an FBI agent. Kanika refused to answer the door. Wednesday, August 27th. The second knock came from an alleged FedEx driver. He claimed he had a package that he needed Kanika to sign for. He said he would be back to acquire the package from his truck, but never came back with the package. Thursday, August 28th. Kanika received another knock, the final knock, on her door at around 7:30 a.m. from another person claiming to be a delivery man to deliver a package. After not answering, She decided to run some quick errands and get her car serviced. Upon returning at around 11:30 a.m., she was gunned down. This was the day before her planned trip to Pride in Atlanta. Friday, August 29th. On the day she and her girlfriend were supposed to be on the road traveling to Atlanta, Kanika succumbed to her injuries and was declared deceased. The case breakdown. Understanding Prince George's County. Before we can take a look at Kanika's murder, we have to first understand the county layout in which she lived. Kanika lived in Prince George's County, or affectionately known as PG County. PG County is home to a population of around 950,000 residents today in 2024, and around 850,000 in 2008. For decades, the county held the badge of being the wealthiest majority Black county in America, until as of recently, Charles County, Maryland now holds that badge, which is only minutes away from PG County. Just like every county, there are some good parts and some bad parts. Laurel, in Kanika's community, was not a high crime area at that time, which made this murder out of the ordinary, especially in the manner it was executed. For the most part, some of the cities within the county are in close proximity, whereas some are spread out like Brandywine to Hyattsville versus Suitland to Capitol Heights. There is a unique vibe in each city, from more urban areas and plenty of suburbs like Upper Marlboro or Bowie within the county. The similarities of another murder. There was another murder that took place close to 3 months after Kanika was murdered, and within PG County. It was the murder of 31-year-old Sean Nicholas Green. Sean, just as Kanika, seemed to live a quiet life where he worked and took care of his family. He too also held a security clearance and worked in national security. I'm still going to explain the security clearances, just give me a minute. Sean was murdered on Thursday, November 13th, 2008, at a red stoplight at the Capitol Beltway near Oxon Hill during rush hour, shot 9 times at close range while sitting in his car. The masked gunman, his killer, has not been caught to this day, nor a motive. Sean lived in Oxon Hill, which is about 30 miles from Laurel, where Kanika lived. Though they lived in the same county, they were pretty spread out. Sean, just as Kanika, was loved by his family. He was a great, well-educated guy that took an interest early on in computer technology. For middle and high school, he attended Gwynn Park and was enrolled in a county math and science program. Upon graduating, he worked in Washington, D.C. as a tech coordinator, Garnett Patterson Middle School and Terrell Junior High School. After Sean attended Frostburg State University and received a Bachelor of Science degree in 2007 from the University of Maryland, he began working for BEA Systems as a contract tech support employee with top-secret security clearance at the National Counterterrorism Center in Tysons Corner, Virginia. According to Sean's supervisor in the Washington Post, he said, quote, "Green kept classified information flowing and critical computer systems humming," end quote. Sean's co-workers reported to have seen him reading his Bible outside during his breaks. Outside of his work and education, Sean cared for his 8 nephews, would attend their games, and was a role model to all 8 boys. Sean described himself as a quote-unquote square, and not even into hip-hop. However, the very thing that some hip-hop tracks rapped about is the same manner in which he died. Something that you would call a street death. This all just gives you an idea of who Sean was, which helps eliminate any possible gang activity or drug involvement that some have alluded to as the reasoning behind his murder. Though possible, I think it is highly unlikely he was involved in anything sinister or any street activity just from his profile. This, I believe, is a case of mistaken identity, or someone who wanted him dead. For what reason? We don't know. Some have alluded to both murders being connected because they both were well educated, held security clearances, resided in the same county, and were murdered in the same county. And in similar fashion, multiple gunshots, seemingly targeted, great jobs, and security clearances. With Sean's murder, he appears he was targeted just as Kanika. Possibly, he was more than likely watched and tailed from leaving his starting point to arriving at the stoplight in his vehicle. There were surrounding vehicles at the light with him, but none of them could identify the face or aesthetic of the assailant. Whoever responsible wanted him dead, or the person they thought was him. They did it in a public area with other vehicles around and fled the scene. This took place in the fall, so it did get dark earlier in Maryland, making it even more difficult to see who the assailant was, especially with the execution taking place so quickly. In my opinion, both murders are unrelated. They happened at a far distance, completely different ends of the county, and it has not been proven that the two possibly known each other. People have made the connection only based on their jobs, and the murders have taken place in the same county. So, the security clearance question. I've scoured several articles, read comments and boards regarding Kanika's case. The correlation many have made is that Kanika's death is directly related to her job because she held a top secret clearance, and because her job has been pretty hush-hush. So let me explain. As I've stated, Prince George's County for decades have been the wealthiest Black populated county in America. How? Well, PG is right outside of DC, and there are thousands upon thousands of residents that work in DC and live in PG. Those PG residents work mainly in DC and Virginia, where they may hold a government job or a contract job that supports the federal government. With that, they are required to have a clearance. Some positions require a confidential level clearance, a secret level clearance, or a top secret clearance. The security clearance level is issued based on the responsibilities of the candidate. This is why Kanika holding a top secret clearance is not out of the norm to me or means her job was the reason she was murdered or tied to it. Holding a security clearance is standard in the area if you work for the government, and government jobs and government contractor jobs require it. Commentators have also commented how her job was something she could not speak about. Kanika could not share exactly what she did for work, nor could her supervisor publicly share her role at the lab in which she worked. Judy recalled how Kanika would have to travel to different states, but she couldn't share for what reason or any details regarding the trip. Again, she held a top secret clearance, which means she most likely could not share certain details about the job or any details about her work duties. Even with a top secret clearance, the restrictions are high. This is why I believe this execution was not carried out as a government hit, as many have alluded to in one of the most popular theories. Who would want Kanika dead? The most interesting element in this case is the persistence. The individuals involved, and I say individuals because Kanika communicated in her email that she heard another guy tell the one who knocked on her apartment door to go the other way. She also felt that there were different men who knocked on her door that differed from the first one, the FBI agent. This lets us know that there may have been two or more people involved, and most importantly, two or more people that have know all about what happened to Kanika and them being involved. Kanika was supposed to travel to Atlanta for the annual Pride Festival on that Friday, August 29th, the day she succumbed to her injuries. Prior to the incident, the plans were still on, which is why she used Thursday to run last-minute errands and get her car serviced before taking the hours-long trip. The person that she was going to Pride with was her new friend, a woman she was dating. This was someone she was dealing with. Judy recalls meeting the woman and briefly speaking to her, but did not sense anything off. Ayanna, Kanika's best friend, had shared that Kanika kept her personal relationships and romantic relationships private. She wasn't the type to advertise or boast about someone she was romantically involved with. This woman was someone new that entered her circle, along with the new set of friends that came along with this woman. When I was researching the case, I wanted to know what exactly changed in Kanika's life during the last month of her life. Well, that's when I came across Kanika having this new relationship. Oddly, there's nothing online about the woman. No name, no mention of who she is, any associates, nothing. Where I'm going with this is, after the first knock on August 23rd, Kanika was gunned down in only 5 days. This was a targeted attack, and whoever responsible seemingly needed to take her life before she left for the trip. There was a sense of urgency. It could have been a coincidence, but with the persistence, I can't see this as a coincidence. Which leads me to think that this person knew pertinent details about her life and the weekend plans in Atlanta. This needed to happen before she left. The final knock on her door came that early morning at around 7:30 a.m. She ran her errands and got her vehicle serviced, then returned around 11 something and was riddled with bullets as she was steps away from her apartment unit. This person waited for her to return. They had to know that she was off work that day and would be returning soon, which is why she could have been met with the assailant in the apartment building hallway. We learned that this new friend Kanika was dating had an ex-boyfriend. Do you see where I'm going with this? This is not to say that the new girlfriend was involved or had any know-all, but I do wonder about to what extent would this ex-boyfriend go to win her back or to have her to himself. According to Judy, she shared that Kanika's friends did not have a good feeling about him. They didn't get friendly looks from the ex and just no good vibes from him. She only was going off what Kanika's longtime friends shared about this man. There's a possibility that the ex-boyfriend was jealous of the new relationship with Kanika and with the fact that they were going out of town that weekend. Perhaps this person did not want this trip to happen, creating the sense of urgency. The question is, who would have known she was home when typically she would have went to work? She would have had to communicate this to the girlfriend since they were scheduled to travel the next day. Naturally, with everything that was going on, Kanika most likely shared these details with her regarding the odd knocks on the door. I do wonder, what was the relationship between the ex-boyfriend and the new girlfriend? We have no proof to believe that the ex-boyfriend was involved, but it does make you question, at what extent would this ex-boyfriend go if he did have any disdain towards Kanika because she now was dating his ex? My next question is, how would Kanika's other friend group who knew Ayana know about the ex-boyfriend and how they received unfriendly looks from him? Does this mean they met him in person, or was this communicated from Kanika to her friends? If the latter, why would Kanika even be in the same space as the ex-boyfriend? I wonder if they shared a child together. We really don't know the full dynamic of that past relationship and who the ex-boyfriend is to formulate a strong opinion as to if he could have been involved somehow or if he is not. The question is, who would know she was planning to stay home that day when she left that morning to run errands, which could have been her going to work and returning later in the afternoon or evening during her normal work hours? Another oddity is that the girlfriend did not show up to Kanika's homegoing service, nor any of the friends in the new friend group that she was hanging around. There could have been a myriad of reasons as to why she nor the other friends didn't attend, but none of the people in this new circle that Kanika became acquainted with had shown up. The getaway. The persons responsible were able to come and go without being caught. We know that. To understand how this could have been executed is to understand the layout of Kanika's community. An associate and I actually flew to Maryland to see how this could have been pulled off and to see the site up close. The area is heavily populated, and her apartment complex was medium-sized. The apartment buildings faced each other, with the road being in the center where cars would park. We have to also remember that whoever the person or persons were, they knew she had to have been home. Whoever responsible had insight or knowledge that she would be home. They knew her vehicle, they knew her name, and they had to know her face. They knew her face because the first knock, the quote-unquote FBI agent, asked if she was Kanika Powell. This tactic could have been standard protocol to not assume it is her, but to ask because if one is posing as an FBI agent, they have to confirm that you are who they are looking for. It just goes with the presentation. An alternative to that is they could have been asking to make sure it was her before they murder her. Interestingly enough, they knew how she looked. These people involved may not have even met Kanika in person, but they knew pertinent details about her. They knew how she looked because once she walked into her apartment building, they immediately opened fire. It's not clear if there were any word exchange except her only yelling no multiple times, assumingly because the assailant, in that split second, raised his firearm to follow through on a murder. When I initiated a skip trace on Kanika, I was able to locate her exact address in Deerfield Run Apartments complex. The location is only steps away from the leasing office, whereas her balcony and another window face the leasing office, and a side window face the main street that leads to the exit of the complex. The entrance and exit into the community is only a short drive from Kanika's apartment building door, making this possible for an easy getaway since she lives so close to the exit. In order to go to Kanika's apartment building, you have to pass the leasing office, and the office would have been open at the time she was ambushed. There's one way in and one way out. My associate and I were able to walk the neighborhood, and we noticed how populated it was. There were even apartments across the street and townhomes adjacent. Whoever involved, they knew the area. They were from the area or at least the county, and have been watching her. Her garden-style apartments were easily accessible as anyone from the outside, non-resident or resident, could access the building, which gave access to the apartment units, with hers being Unit 203. When you enter the building, to the left are the mailboxes for residents. Then straight ahead, there are a few steps that places you on the second floor with Kanika's unit as well as the units of 3 other residents. It was said, based on observation, upon her returning from her errands on that Thursday morning, she walked in, and that's where she noticed the assailant waiting on her to return, then immediately executed Kanika. How did they know when she was going to return? And who would risk being in the hallway to be seen while waiting for their mark to return? Here's what I believe. They may or may not have known that Kanika had left in the morning for errands, after that third and final knock. They knew she was gone because they may not have seen her vehicle parked in the parking lot, or they could have been watching from outside. The assailant waited for her to return and knew it would be easier to ambush Kanika since she would have been outside of her apartment with an open chance of following through with their plan. This sounds like someone who had a goal and intent to murder her. But why? They knew her by name, by face, and most likely pertinent details about her life. This sounded like someone close to her that could have hired people to execute their plan. These people had nothing to lose. Who is responsible? This is where we stand and have been for almost 2 decades with this case. This was no random attack because from the first knock, they asked for Kanika by name. They already knew she lived there, but they wanted to confirm that it was her or just asking to fit the whole FBI agent narrative. They expected her to answer the door, to open it, but she did not, which made their plan extend further out. They even came back as a FedEx delivery driver, all just to get her to open the door. They realized that she wouldn't open the door, so they had to wait for her. This had to be someone that recently entered her circle. In the episode on Unsolved Mysteries titled, A Killer Comes Knocking, Ayanna stated that on Friday, August 22nd, Kanika and some of their mutual friends were out celebrating Ayanna's birthday. Kanika whispered to all of the friends that she had to tell them something and that she would discuss it on the next day, Saturday, August 23rd. Well, that discussion never happened because when Kanika and Ayanna spoke by phone on that Saturday, Kanika was busy filing the reports regarding what she thought was a scam. The first knock with the man posing as an FBI agent. The conversation never happened. It makes you wonder, what could she have needed to share with them? Could it have been related to what we now know as her tragic murder? Or something else? When you look at this case, you also wonder, why didn't this person just execute the plan outside? They knew she had to leave. They knew she was out and about, had to go to work, but they insisted on going to her residence. They wanted her to open her door. I also think, what if Kanika took up the offer to stay at her mother's home or even stay with Ayanna since she felt she was being targeted? Did the persons involved know anything about her family and closest friend? I also wonder if the girlfriend offered her to stay at her residence What was her insight on this entire situation with the bizarre knocks? Kanika naturally had to be in communication with the girlfriend since they were dating and had an upcoming trip. One can assume that if you're targeting someone, you request they open the door after you come up with an elaborate story, and they don't. They would have fear and leave until things die down. This is why I believe whoever involved had to have some direct insight on Kanika and her plans. The biggest thing about this is that Kanika most likely had no idea that this would result to her murder. She felt it was a scam, but not to the extent of murder. Had she known the seriousness of this, she may have explored an alternative option to leave her residence immediately. We know she had some fear about the situation because she expressed her concerns to her mother and even planned to go on base to acquire a firearm for protection. According to her mother and her best friend Ayana, she did not have any bad blood with anyone. The theories. There are some common theories with this case. Some I don't agree with and feel they are highly unlikely, and one where there is a possibility. So theory 1, a professional government hit. As I've already stated, media and commentators have alluded to Kanika's murder being connected to her job. She was a security specialist and her job required a top secret security clearance. This is not uncommon, especially in the area due to her job position. Had she had another position that required only a secret level clearance, then that's the clearance level that she would have had. If this were a professional hit, it was done sloppy. Posing as an FBI agent, posing as a FedEx driver. It just doesn't make sense nor appear to be professional. Sure, these men have never been caught, but this is far from professional. It seems that it was because they have not yet been caught. Some feel she may have come across some secret information and they would have needed to eliminate Kanika because of whatever she was exposed to. I mean, it sounds good, but I believe it is highly unlikely. Kanika was exposed to countless numbers of classified documents, only all of what her job required her to have access to, which is why her position required a top secret clearance. A professional hit would have been done swiftly, and they would not have to keep returning, making it known that they were lying of their identity. I do believe there was a hit put on her for reasons that we don't know of or why, but I believe this case is unrelated to her job, more like a street hit. In my opinion, this was amateur. Theory 2. Kanika was the victim of Jason Thomas Scott. Jason was deemed as the mother-daughter killer who operated in PG County in 2009. He was responsible for 2 slayings of mother-daughter pairs in Largo, which is considered Southern Maryland, and 50 burglaries and 9 armed home invasion robberies. Officials were unsure if he was responsible for any other murders prior to that. Jason attended Largo High School, same as Kanika, and was attending the school the same time she was. Though this piece of information does not do anything for the case because it's not odd to graduate or attend the same school as someone who committed heinous crimes, but commentators have made this connection. Jason worked for UPS and would use his access to addresses to source his victims. With learning about Jason and his operation, Kanika does not necessarily fit the framework of his methodology. She lived in Laurel, which is located in the northern part of Maryland. Jason did not operate in that area. Jason did not go to a residence multiple times to claim his victims. Now, with serial killers, they aren't always persistent over one victim, and they usually have a method of operation of who they're targeting. Though not always the case, it is most common. Kanika was targeted by name, and they did not stop until they got what they wanted. Her attack was not random. Theory 3. The girlfriend. I spoke about this in great detail in my case breakdown. The only thing that changed with Kanika before her death, according to family and friends, is a new friend group and the woman she was dating. I don't know if I think the girlfriend has anything to do with it, but perhaps someone she knows or connected to. There is also a possibility that she can be completely unrelated to the case, including her ex-boyfriend. We don't know if she was ever interviewed by law enforcement, which you would think she was because of her scheduled trip to go out of town with Kanika that following day. She had contact with her, and her being connected to Kanika since they were involved. It is a hard call because we have nothing on the girlfriend. Nothing. I think it is highly likely that something is there, but there could be a possibility that it's a red herring. We just don't know. Her not showing up to the hospital or the homegoing ceremony isn't very telling because she may not have gone because she maybe just started talking to Kanika and didn't feel close enough to attend her service. I mean, that is something that we don't have confirmation on as to when they started dating. Perhaps she had no connections to the family, except for just meeting her mom, those few times and speaking to her. And then also it could be that she simply just didn't like funerals. Or it could be something else, whereas she could have insight. We don't know. My opinion. I heard about this case probably 8 years ago. I would check on it from time to time to see if there were any updates, and there weren't. Kanika led a typical life, but something interrupted that and we don't know why or who. Kanika did everything she could. However, where she did not make the best judgment is by staying at the location where she was when she could have stayed with family or her best friend Ayana. There is a possibility that the persons knew her family and where they resided. We also don't know what she needed to tell her friends while at the celebration for Ayana. We will never know. Whoever responsible, they acted in urgency and needed to get this done before she left out of town, and that is something important to note. They did everything they could to get her to open the door, but once she didn't open the door, all bets were off and they met her before she can reach her door. Prince George's County PD said they have no person of interest, but I wonder how they came to that conclusion. That means that they could not find anything in Kanika's life that would result to her being murdered. I wonder what was the true relationship with Kanika and the woman. I wonder if there were any malice between them both. I even wonder the communication that they last had. And I also wonder, how was that and what was it about? When I think about the ambush, where was the individual hiding in the building? Kanika shared that she noticed that when she would return home from work, she would see cigarette butts near her door as if someone was waiting around for her. Someone had to have seen this man in the hallway waiting around. I want you to remember that waiting for someone to leave out of their apartment is one thing if you're genuinely waiting for them, but waiting for someone to leave out of their apartment to murder them is something else. The demeanor may be different. Even with the men who would knock then leave her building, where would they be parked? Kanika's cousin lived in a neighboring apartment complex and actually saw the man walking past the leasing office and towards the exit out of the Deerfield Run apartments. He walked in a way that was out of their eyesight. We don't know if he drove, had a driver, or was on foot. This case is convoluted. I can see how you don't know which way to turn to formulate your opinion. If there is something else in Kanika's life that we don't know, this would be the time to share it. If not, I think it's odd about the ex-boyfriend and how he may be related to the case, or maybe not. Until people start talking and sharing what they know, this case won't be solved. It makes you question everything and everyone, with more questions than answers. The amount of startling, heart-wrenching, paralyzing fear that Kanika felt is a feeling that no one deserves to feel. I thank Kanika for her service and all that she gave this world. I want peace for her family because not knowing is the second hardest part. DMV area. There is a murderer that is walking around with Kanika's blood on their hands. Someone holds the answers to this nearly 2-decade-long mystery. Until then, this case will sit unsolved and freezing cold. If you have any information or leads in the murder of Kanika Powell, or any information concerning Kanika, it should be directed to the Prince George's County Police Department at 301-352-1200. Or you can contact the Prince George's County Crime Solvers Hotline at 1-866-411-8477. Or you can visit their website. I want to thank you for your viewership and listenership of Kanika's case. This case is haunting because there are no answers. This was an execution that was done in broad daylight. Those involved had no fear of being caught after their multiple attempts of trying to gain access to Kanika. This case is a troubling mystery that deserves answers. Hopefully, we don't have to go another decade without knowing. As always, please be safe, be vigilant, and always be aware of your surroundings. May God bless and keep you all. Jesus looked straight at them and answered, "This is impossible for human beings, but for God, everything is possible." Matthew chapter 19, verse 26.